Okay, so we have Swami Atmapriyananda Maharaj from Swami Vivekananda University, who's here to join us. And today, in the second session, we're talking about the topic of who is the essence of you, the inner journey. In other words, who am I? So Swamiji is going to speak a few words on this topic.
The discussion is inner journey. Recently, I was in Houston in the NASA Space Center, and I was astonished pleasantly to see the large number of people that signed up for making a journey in the space station, which is going to happen perhaps after a couple of decades, 2040, 2050. So there's so much curiosity about exploring the outer space. And as you know, this country, USA, is leading the race. We have already put men on the moon, and we are exploring Mars and so on. But interestingly, this Earth, the planet on which we live, is a very mediocre planet which is going around the sun. And the sun itself is a very mediocre star in our galaxy. All of you know this. And there are millions of galaxies, much brighter suns, and hundreds of millions of stars which are being born and which die every moment. In such a scenario, there's so much excitement about making a journey to Mars, exploring the outer space. As somebody said, defining a human being, who are we? That was a very interesting statement. We are conglomeration of carbon atoms crawling pathetically on a grain of cosmic dust. That's what we are. But there is another dimension to man in which a human being has a mind which is exploratory. It's curious to know. Why does a man explore? Why does a man go for adventure? Why does a man want to go for certain explorations in space, the mountaineering and so on, even risking his own life? Is it for science? Obviously no. Is it for personal glory? It can't be, because there is no certainty that the man will come back. What is it that makes him explore? He is exploring because there is an inner spirit in man which wants to explore. As Alfred Tennyson said in the Ulysses, one equal temper made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. There is a seeking which is inherent in human psyche. Swami Vivekananda, one of the greatest exponents of the religion of Vedanta, ancient wisdom of India, which has been experimented with, explored, discovered, and documented over thousands of years by hundreds of thousands of people in ancient India. Swami Vivekananda said famously that the Western world explored in the outer space through science and technology. But in India, when we understood there is a grand inner nature of man, much grander than the sun and the moon and the stars and the nebulae, and that deserves a deeper study, a great exploration. And they asked a fundamental question, which is now being asked by science, particularly theoretical physics, which is the following. What is that one principle by knowing which everything in the universe can be known? They call it the theory of everything. Those of you who have read the famous book of Stephen Hawking will know how the human mind at the present day is exploring to find out the theory of everything. Albert Einstein was exploring the theory of everything through a unified field theory. Is it possible for us to have a unified theory by which we will be able to explain the various facts of science, of physics, of the outer nature, of the atoms, of particles, of gravitational forces, of the celestial bodies, all of them at one stroke, the macrocosm and the microcosm in the external world, through a single theory? Is it possible? If it is possible, we should know this. What is the urge in the human heart? Unification. Swami Vivekananda said, science is the finding of unity. The human mind has a tremendous urge to see unity in diversity. What we see in the world is diversity. Human beings are different cultures, different religions, gender, different nationalities, different cultures, different languages, different codes of conduct, different ways of dressing and eating. Hundreds of thousands of differences exist in diversity, not only in human beings and animals and plants. How many varieties of ants and animals are there in the universe? Even if you take a small ant, biologists will tell you that thousands of varieties of ants. Take fishes, for example. Take animals. Nature rejoices in diversity, but there's a fundamental unifying principle on which the diversity is based. Unless we seek out that principle of unity in the midst of diversity and celebrate this diversity, not only accept it, but positively rejoice at this diversity, knowing full well this entire diversity, this entire kaleidoscope of diversity is cast on a rigid, solid, unifying canopy of oneness. This exploration was taken up by the sages and the seers of the Hindu religion, the Vedanta religion. In India, ages ago, they wanted to find out what is the inner nature of man. Is it that the man is merely the body? Beyond the body, there is a vital force. And we talk about the mind of man, we do not know what is the mind. There is a theory that the mind is only an epiphenomenon of matter. Chemical secretions in the brain is what we call the mind. But we have come far away from that. There was a time when the neuroscientists used to frown upon the very idea of consciousness. Now, a lot of research is going on in consciousness, human consciousness. What is consciousness at all? What is the nature of consciousness? It can't be merely material, but there is a material component in it. There is a mental component. Beyond that, is there a spiritual component at all? If there is one, what is the spirit of man? This inquiry started from a very simple question of how we understand what we actually see and perceive in nature. We get inputs from outside through our senses. The eyes see, the ears hear, the tongue tastes, the nose smells, and the skin touches. These are called the 5 senses. In Sanskrit, the ancients called it, Vedanta calls it, as Pancha Jnanendriyas. Jnana means knowledge, Indriya is the sense. And these are the 5 senses of perception. Jnanendriyas. What do the Jnanendriyas do? They give us input from the outside world. And we boast about our great achievements. As Shakespeare said in the Measure for Measure, a very interesting statement. Man, proud man, dressed in his little brief authority, most ignorant of what he is most sure of, his grassy essence, like an angry ape, makes such fantastic gestures before the high heavens, which makes the angels weep. What he was mentioning was because we are so proud of our achievements. Let us analyze this a little more. Suppose I didn't have eyes at all. Suppose I was born blind. How do you know and perceive the world outside? Through touch, through smell, through taste, and through sound. Suppose I am born blind and deaf. How do I perceive the world? By touch, by smell, and by taste. Suppose I can't smell at all, there's some problem with my nose buds, then how do I know the world outside? By taste and touch. My tactile sensations also have become completely defunct. How do you know the world? By taste. Suppose my taste buds also go away, how do you know the world outside? The answer is, I just can't perceive the world at all. So which means you see how flimsy is our perception, based on which we talk about science and technology and exploration, all the great achievements and so on. The entire thing is based upon the inputs which we get from the outside world through these 5 senses of perception, Jnanendriyas. And we believe these perceptions to be true. Are they really true? We don't question the inputs that we get. Suppose somebody gives you some information. You ask, how far is this information true? Let me just find out. But we don't question the authority of the senses. Being slaves of the senses as we are, we blindly believe the senses to be true and base all our conclusion upon the inputs of the senses. The beginning of the 20th century, as you know, the veracity of the senses and the input received from senses was seriously questioned by a remarkable discovery in 1900 by Max Planck, who came up with the quantum theory of radiation. It is now common knowledge that radiation consists not of waves or particles, but wave packets, each one of these packets being a bundle of energy, the energy of each packet being proportional to the frequency of radiation. The frequency is a wave concept and a packet is a particle concept. The particle and the wave have been blended into the structure of the radiation phenomenon. Then came up another idea. Matter and radiation are 2 manifestations of nature. If radiation has particle characteristics, particles could also have wave characteristics. Because if this didn't happen, nature is not symmetric. If nature is not symmetric, nature is not beautiful. Beauty and symmetry always go together. We believe that there's some beauty in nature. Nature is truth, nature is beauty, nature is goodness. Socrates talked about this, truth, beauty and goodness. In India, the sages discovered Satyam, Sundaram, Shivam. And beauty is symmetry. So we came up with a fantastic and revolutionary idea which smashed to smithereens all our conceptions about matter itself. A particle, which is a piece of matter, could also have wave characteristics. It opened up a whole world of quantum mechanics and wave mechanics thanks to Heisenberg, Schrödinger, and a host of remarkable thinkers. Why I am mentioning this is because these great thinkers questioned the veracity of the inputs from the senses. Senses may show you this, but you go deeper, you find that the senses do not give you the right picture. That is the power of the human mind. The mind which analyzes, the mind which questions, the mind which investigates, The mind which wants to find out the truth behind the whole thing. So we realize that the senses do not give us the correct picture. The quantum picture is not given by the senses. The picture that a particle is a wave is not given by the senses. But the human mind, analyzing what the senses give you, come up with certain instruments, exploratory devices by which the truth is unraveled. In the beginning, the truth is unraveled through theory, and later on these are vindicated, justified by experiments. In 1905 came up the idea of the special theory of relativity by Einstein, as you know, which completely changed our idea of space and time. We used to believe that space is something out there, and we are in space. Einstein came and told us that we are not in space, we are space. I'm not going to give you a lecture on physics now. Why I mention this? Because we say that we are in space, the senses tell us this. But Einstein said the senses may tell you that we are in space, but go deeper and say, he discovered through theory, through mathematics, that space and matter are inextricably intertwined into a fabric. Presence of massive objects produces a curvature in space. So you no longer talked about space and time, you talked about space, time and relativity. And 10 years later, 1915, he came up with the general theory of relativity, which is the theory of gravitation. When objects fell, Newtonian physics said they are attracted by the earth through gravitation. Einstein said it is not a property of the matter at all, it is a property of space. It is not that the objects are being attracted to one another, but the very structure of space, which is curved, is that the objects appear to be coming together not through attraction, but the very property of the space in which they are embedded. These are revolutionary concepts which came to man, human mind, through investigation into the inputs which we have received from the senses. So we realized that the senses should not be taken too seriously. Senses have their value, they give us the inputs, but now go deeper and find out what the senses are saying. His theory, 1915, the gravitational theory, after nearly 20 years, this was vindicated through a great exploration during total solar eclipse by Arthur Eddington, his contemporary, and exactly tallied with what Einstein predicted. There is a story of how this was reached to Einstein through a telegram, and one of his students, LC, told him, "Sir, your theory has been proved to be right." And Einstein said, casually sipping his lazy tea, "I knew anyway that it was right." She asked a simple counter question, "Sir, what would you say if this theory has been proved to be not right?" Then he smiled and said, "I would have been sad for the great Lord, but I know that my theory is right." That is the power of theory, power of mathematics, the power of intuitive human intellect. Just the other day, a couple of weeks ago, 3 scientists from the USA were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for having proved and seen the gravitational waves which Einstein predicted exactly 100 years ago. Why I am mentioning all this is because the intuitive, penetrative human mind is capable of seeing through what appears to be true as revealed by the senses, and getting a deeper picture of what actually is true. This is exactly what Vedanta teaches. Vedanta says, do not disbelieve your senses, have your senses, enjoy the world, but remember, things are not what they really seem. The famous line by Longfellow, things are not what they seem. They seem to be this, but they exactly are not that. We seem to be human beings encased in a body and a mind. We seem to be suffering. We seem to be laughing and crying. We seem to be going through pain and pleasure. But we are not that little entity. So you explore into your inner nature, take an inward journey. Will you all sign up? So many people have signed up for a journey into space in the space station which is being built up by NASA. So the Vedanta Society of San Diego invites you to sign up for the exploration into the inner space. Come on. No costs. It's all free. The Vedanta says, I am building a space station within, and I am going to take you for an inner exploratory expedition by asking very simple questions about my own life and existence. The simplest experience that I have as a human being, that you have as a human being, is that you see the outside world extended before you. You see nature, you see the sun and the moon and the stars, you see all the panorama of existence outside. This is an object which is seen by me, perceived by me, felt by me. Who is the perceiver? Me. I ask you a simple question. Suppose you see a piece of matter outside. You see the sun and the moon and the stars, or the tables and chairs in your room. What is the nature of this matter? Physics and science have asked this question without having really come to an answer. Matter is something which exists in space. What is space? We just now saw the conception of space itself has changed. It is not that matter exists in space, matter and space exist together. Einstein was once asked a simple question, can you explain to me the theory of relativity in just a single sentence? He thought for a while, smiled and said, earlier physics said that if all the matter in the universe vanishes, space and time alone will remain. I have shown space and time will also vanish along with matter. That means it is not matter in space-time, but space-time matter exist or fall together. Suppose I give you a simple definition of matter. Just think about this, whether you agree. Matter, matter is something which I know, I have seen. That means matter is something which a person, a conscious person, perceives and sees and feels and experiences. Would that be a characteristic of matter? Physical sciences, materialistic sciences would say that could be a definition, but we don't go by that definition. We want everything to be explained completely in terms of materialism. But the world is a mixture of matter and the spirit. I am a spirit talking to you, and you are the spirit listening to me, and you can't be completely matter. You react, you listen, you process in your mind. There is a faculty within you which processes, analyzes, listens, investigates. Vedanta is asking you, don't wish it away as not being of your concern. You can't be concerned about something only when you actually reduce it to material objects. You have to be concerned about the totality of existence, wherever it could lead you. It may be very uncomfortable to a material scientist to say there is a consciousness which is looking at matter and working through matter. But it's a fact of reality that I see matter, I experience matter. The entire material nature outside is being experienced, seen by me. So there are two objects. One is the person who sees, perceives and knows. The other is which is being seen, perceived and known. So there is a known outside, which is an object. There is a knower, which knows the object. And there is a process of knowledge which makes the known and the knower to be connected and the process of knowing possible. This is a very simple fact of existence. So all that we have in this universe, in which knowledge is being cultivated, perception is being seen, all that exists in the universe is the knower, the known, and knowledge. So you hear a sound, there should be something which is heard, a person who hears it, the hearer, and the process of hearing. You taste something, some object which is being tasted, a person who tastes it, and the process of tasting. Everywhere in knowledge, sense knowledge, you have these three. Vedanta calls it technically as Triputi. Three means three in English, comes from the Sanskrit word three. Puti, ways in which the perception is striated. There is a striation in consciousness by which there is a known, the knower, and knowledge. We have been overmuch concerned about the known and knowledge. And we have left the knower in the cold. The Western sciences, materialistic sciences, the great strides in technology and science in the modern times, has completely neglected the knower as of no consequence. With the result, the knower is unhappy, he can't handle himself. He handles huge instruments at his laboratory. He handles the electron microscopes. He handles the instruments by which he can explore into the stars and find out and make extraordinary discoveries. But he comes home, can't handle himself, becomes extremely depressed and upset. He loses on certain prizes, which his friend who collaborated with him got it, and therefore he feels, I have been denied. And he cries and becomes angry. So what is the use of this great scientist handling such huge instruments but can't handle himself? This is a crisis which is coming up, particularly in the West, because the West has made, particularly in the USA, has made tremendous advances, unimaginable advances in the last 50 years. Several millennia have not seen such advance as the last 50 years have seen. We are proud of it, of course. We are proud of this great country which has made extraordinary discoveries. And we from India come and chip in. Sir, you have done so well, but could we share a knowledge with you in which for millennia upon millennia we have investigated into the nature of the knower. Who is the person who knows? And we have made some fantastic discoveries. Come on, it's a potluck. You bring your knowledge on the table, I bring my knowledge, let us share and enjoy. The Vedanta Society of San Diego invites you for this potluck, Vedantic potluck. Now, who is the knower? I see an object outside through the eyes. Do the eyes actually see? It appears that the eyes see, but when I am absent-minded, when I am thinking about something else, I look at an object but I don't see it properly. Behind the eyes there is something else. Brain nerves, optic nerves carry the stimulations to the brain and so on. But is that the seer? Vedanta analysis goes back to the source and finds that all that you see, all that you perceive, depends upon you as existence. If I don't exist at all that I see has no meaning. So my existence is fundamental to my perception of the things outside. What is my existence? I analyze my existence by seeing that I, in the waking state, see all that is happening. And when I close my eyes, I can imagine a whole world of memories. I see that I perceive through the senses, but senses are not all. Behind the matter, there's a vital force, a vital energy. If I don't eat properly, if I'm very weak in body, I don't get sufficient nutrition, if the level of potassium or sodium in my body changes, I don't have the proper perception. I lose my memory. I can't remember things. So there is a vital energy which is within me, which is not purely material, nor is it purely non-material, which is biological, which controls my perception. Certain drugs produce different effects of perception. So my biological system can be manipulated. The Nobel Prize this time went to the biological clock discovery.
Yeah. Circadian.
So biological clock within me which goes on ticking is a thing which you can't wish away. So there's a biological clock within me which is not purely material, nor is it purely non-material. And behind this there is something which I call thought. I take all the inputs from outside through the senses and the biological clock and process them in a unit which is called the mind, which is a central processing unit, CPU, which is within me. But the mind, of course, is heavily dependent on the body and the functions of the body and the biology of the body. The mind can become depressed due to certain medicines, and the mind can be elevated also through medicines. That means the mind and the body are very deeply interconnected. Doctors now say that most of the diseases facing humankind are psychosomatic. Psychosomatic meaning the mind and the body come together, and the mind produces certain illnesses in the body. These illnesses are not imaginary. These illnesses are real. Real illnesses of the body projected by certain aberrations and illnesses of the human mind. So psychosomatic is a thing which has come to stay, and we know that it is acceptable and it can't be denied. So you have the physical body, you have the vital body which is the biological clock, and you have the mind which is connected with this body. Immediately you discover the modern advances in science and biological sciences and materialistic sciences. They have accepted these three layers exist in the human body. Vedanta discovered it long ago, and the Sanskrit names for these are the Annamaya, the Pranamaya, and the Manomaya. Maya means full of. The Anna means matter, pure material body, which you see when you're viewing this television. Physical body. You don't see my mind, of course. You don't see my biological clock, but you see the physical body. Behind this is the Pranamaya. Prana is a great discovery with Indian sages, which is a link between pure physical matter and the non-material which is behind this. It is both material and non-material. It is both spontaneous, autonomous, as well as controllable. All of you know there are two kinds of functions in the body, voluntary and involuntary actions. When I raise my hand, This is voluntary action. Because I may raise it or I may not raise it, I may choose to keep quiet. It depends on my will. But there are certain actions which is involuntary. When I am talking to you, when you are listening to me, your heart is pumping. Your lungs are functioning. The food that you consumed a couple of hours ago is being digested. Circulation of blood is going on. You have no way to control them because they are spontaneous, natural, and involuntary. Now, is it possible to convert the voluntary into involuntary and vice versa? These were profound questions which were asked by the ancient Indian seers. Because they found every inch of my body and mind and senses should be completely under my control. Which is exactly what modern scientists are talking about in terms of the external nature. I will conquer nature. I will conquer gravitation. I'll go to a place where there is zero gravitation. I will go and land on the moon. I will manipulate nature according to my whims. Man always wants to be a conqueror. That is the glory of the human mind. I will not accept defeat. I will conquer. We are born to conquer. Swami Vivekananda said, man is born to conquer nature, it is true, but what the nature which the Western scientists mean is the external nature. But the Indian scientists, the spiritual scientists called the rishis in India, wanted to conquer the internal nature. Each is grand, and each of these pursuits supplements each other. So is it possible to convert all the involuntary actions into voluntary and vice versa? For which you ask a question, is there any function in the human body which is both voluntary and involuntary? Think about this question. Raising my hand is purely voluntary. The functioning of my heart is absolutely involuntary. I have no control over it. The yogis said, no, I have to control even the pumping of the heart, the movement of the lungs, circulation of blood, digestion. Every little of my bodily functions shall be under my control. I will be the conqueror. The conqueror is called Raja in Sanskrit, means he is a king. An ordinary king is a person who rules over kingdom, but a spiritual kingdom is ruled by a super king called Maharaja. And therefore in India, sannyasins and people who pursue the spiritual path are called Maharajas. They have a spiritual kingdom to rule. All of you know how Jesus, the Christ, also said, I am the king of the Jews. They got confused. Are you the king of the Jews? He said, yes, but my kingdom is not of this earth. They couldn't understand and they crucified him. And they ridiculed him by putting a crown of thorns on his head. Here is the king with a crown of thorns. So all the great prophets of religions have said this. They are ruling over a kingdom over which they have absolute control. So what is that function in the human psyche, human mind, human body, which is both voluntary and involuntary? If we can get a clue into that, through that we can convert the voluntary into involuntary and vice versa. And the sages found that is breath. You breathe. When I am talking to you, I am constantly breathing. You and I would die if we are not breathing. But we are not conscious that we are breathing. Breath constantly goes on. The lungs purify the blood, the oxygen intake, and the heart is pumping. But I can now close the nostrils and stop the breath. The breathing is a function which is at once voluntary and involuntary. So they developed a great science by which they can control prana, which is the vital force. And they developed a great science called pranayama. Now yoga is the buzzword now all over the world. One of the very important components of yoga is pranayama. Because by manipulating and regulating and controlling breath, I control prana. It is not only the breathing exercise. Breathing is only a symptom or manifestation of the prana. Prana is a vast force, including the physical forces, the mental forces, the psychic forces. All the forces are included in the word prana, and by having control over the movement of this prana, a yogi can control the forces of nature, external and internal. I am telling you how slowly the inner exploration, the inner journey is moving. So we have moved from the physical body, Annamaya, to the Pranamaya, which is the vital force. And then you peep into the Manomaya. Like a booster rocket, one by one. The rocket is dropped and then we go to the different space. We have come to the third station. When you enter in an elevator and press 3, 4. Second floor, going up. We are now second floor, going up to the third floor, which is called the Manomaya. The Manomaya is a world of ideas. Thought. What is thought? Who asks this question, what is thought? Thought is asking this question. How would you analyze thought? By what? You have to find out what thought is through thought itself. That becomes a very interesting exercise. Why yoga, the inner world, is more difficult than the outer world, more challenging, is because here the mind itself becomes the object of exploration of mind. Mind has to fall back upon itself and explore the nature of its own existence and being and functioning. Which means there is a part of the mind which analyzes, the other part which is being analyzed. So as it were, you divide the mind into the lower mind and the higher mind. Because it is a necessity, you can't say the mind is analyzing itself. It is just like saying, I am lifting myself by myself. I can lift an object, I can lift you. You can lift me, but I can't be lifting myself. That means there should be a part of mind which is being analyzed by the other part which is the analyzer. This leads you to a conclusion that the mind or consciousness has the capacity to divide itself, as it were, into the known and the knower, into the analyzed and the analyzer, into the perceived and the perceiver. This is a peculiar property of consciousness which I am now discovering, I am exploring with you, to be able to divide itself into a subject and an object. The mind is the object and the mind itself is the subject. So when I analyze the mind and the nature of mind, I find that the mind is thoughts. Are thoughts in the mind? Or is it the mind itself is thoughts? Just like Einstein said, it is not that objects are in space, objects are space. It is not that thoughts are in the mind like contained in a container. There is a glass in which there is water. Water is there in this glass. Is a container-contained relationship. Are the thoughts like that? Is it that there is a mind which is a container in which thoughts are present as contained? Or is it thoughts themselves are the mind? If all the thoughts vanish, will the mind remain? It is just like saying somebody went to a fancy show, a crowd of 2,000 people. He came back and said, all the people left, but the crowd remained. Who is the crowd? The crowd is the people. If all people go away, the crowd is not there anymore. You call this collection of people as the crowd. So all the thoughts vanish, the mind itself becomes an empty. So the thoughts are constantly moving. What is the speed of thought? Material objects have some speed, and it was Einstein once again who proved that no material particle can be accelerated so as to reach a speed which is equal to the velocity of light. From a speed which is less than light, that of light, they can't be accelerated as to reach the velocity of light. This is a well-known law in the relativity theory. Another scientist from this country, University of Texas at Austin, of Indian origin, Professor George Sudarshan, he was my thesis examiner. He asked a very interesting question. If no particle can travel with the velocity of light, how is it light particle travels with the velocity of light? See how the human mind is asking very interesting, funny, fundamental questions. The answer is, it was not that this particle was traveling with a velocity of less than that of light and later accelerated so as to reach the velocity of light. It was born that way. It was existing as equal to the velocity of light. Then he asked a further question, then could there be particles which were born with a velocity greater than that of light? Why not? If light particles existed having the velocity of light, why not particles which have been existing with a velocity greater than that of light, which can never be stopped to a velocity which is less than or equal to that of light? He came up with the theory of what is known as tachyons. Unfortunately, the tachyons have not been found as yet. When the tachyons are found, Professor Sudarshan will get a Nobel Prize. You don't know when they will be discovered. Higgs had to wait for nearly 60 years to get the Higgs boson discovered. And the gravitational waves were discovered 100 years after Einstein. Einstein, of course, passed away. So you never know the power of theory. Intuitively, the mind feels this has to be this. This could be this. Sudarshan asked a question, what is the power of thought? What is the speed of thought? Thought could be a tachyon, for example. So what is the nature of thought? Where does thought arise? What is the source of thought? You may say there are inconvenient questions which science has no inclination to answer, and science is not concerned about them. Don't ask these questions. But Vedanta will come and say, you have to answer and ask these questions because science is being pursued by a person, a human being, who is called a scientist. A scientist may pursue science, but scientist has to ask fundamental question about the scientist himself. Scientist and science can't be separated. So we are asking a question which is very profound. What is the source of thought? Where from do thoughts arise? Is it possible that the mind can be controlled and manipulated? Can thoughts be manipulated? I rush of thoughts. I am terrible. Can the thoughts be slowed down? Is there an exercise by which I can calm these waves of thoughts? Is it possible for me to completely still the mind so that no thoughts arise at all? Theoretically, it should be possible. Because if you say they are not possible, then we should accept that the thoughts are constantly rising. You have no clue to the science of thoughts. The science of the mind is what is called yoga. The yoga says that you have a science of the body, which is physical science, biological science, and I have a science of the mind, which is called yoga. They call it, the name given is Chitta. Chitta is the mind. It's considered a lake. You throw a pebble in the lake, a stone in the lake, so many waves, ripples arise. Constantly ripples arising in the mind lake. They are called vrittis. vrittis are ripples which arise in the mind, the lake of the chitta, lake of the mind. We are asking a question now. Is it possible for the vrittis of the mind to be completely controlled, stopped altogether? Stopping the chitta vritti is called nirodha, stopping. And yoga therefore has been defined by the great sage Patanjali as yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is quelling the waves of the mind. What is the advantage? The advantage is you can become calmer, more tranquil. And apart from the advantage, you have become a conqueror of the mind itself. We have conquered the external objects, but we are slaves of our own mind. We are slaves of our own senses. My mind says, go and do this. Good, bad, indifferent. And I am compelled by the mind to do this. But when I have complete control over the mind, I realize I am not the mind, but I am the conqueror of the mind itself. Apart from the mind, there is something which is beyond the mind which I can conquer. I can manipulate every wave of the mind at the mental level, the manomaya. I can manipulate, regulate and control every wave of the mind at the manomaya. I can manipulate and control the pranamaya, the vital forces, and I have control over the body itself. That is the science of what is known as Hatha Yoga. The great yogasanas and exercises which go in the name of yoga these days belong to a science called Hatha Yoga. This was perfected in India. Hundreds of thousands of people over a few thousand years have practiced and explored into it and found out the science of controlling every limb of your body. This moment I can control my body, I can control my breath, I can manipulate my blood circulation, I can stop my heart at will and allow the heart to slow down. Yogis have demonstrated all this. This is not a joke. Even now there are people who can do this. That means there is something beyond all this which is controlling. I am not the body, I am not the vital forces, the prana, I am not the mind, the manomaya. I am something which is beyond the annamaya, pranamaya, manomaya. I am the conqueror. Who is the conqueror? When I have come to the third floor, let's go up now, the fourth floor. There's another layer of existence which I call the higher mind. As we were discussing just now, the mind is to be studied, analyzed, controlled, manipulated, regulated by the mind itself. There is no other instrument that I have. And the higher mind is what manipulates the lower mind. And the manomaya, which is full of thoughts, I try to control, quell, regulate, calm down these thoughts. By the force of something which is superior to even the manomaya, the Vedanta discovered it as the Vijnanamaya. Science has not, the materialistic biological sciences have not come to it. But you can have the manifestation of this Vijnanamaya when extraordinary scientific discoveries take place. A scientist, after all, is a human being, and he brings this intuitive faculty of the Vijnanamaya to bear upon what he is discovering and throws some flashes of intuition, flashes of scientific discovery. This has happened everywhere in science, everywhere in arts. The genius of a Shakespeare or a Picasso or a Beethoven or an Einstein is not merely that he is thinking through his mind, but something apart from his mind, superior to the mind, the Vijnanamaya, which just lets go and operates through the annamaya, pranamaya, manomaya. There are hundreds of instances in scientific discoveries which these things have taken place. Kekule, the famous chemist who discovered the cyclic structure of benzene, the aromatic compound. He was so conditioned by the linear structure of the aliphatic compounds, methane, ethane, and so on, he just couldn't bring himself to thinking of the cyclic structure. The story is, he was deeply contemplating the structure of benzene and became so tired. Suddenly a vision opened up. It is recorded. A kind of a vision opened up in which he saw carbon atoms making in the form of a dragon, and this dragon opened its mouth and was biting its tail. And the eureka! That's it. The structure of benzene is cyclic. It is recorded in chemistry books. He was asked later, how did I don't know, but I saw it in a vision. The logical mind, which is the manomaya, comes later on and then codifies it and formulates it. The formulation and the codification, analysis and classification is done by the manomaya, the lower mind, but the intuition comes from the higher mind. There is another mathematical genius from India called Srinivasa Ramanujan. He used to write down so many theorems in his notebook. Hardy, his great mentor, he took him to England. And he was struck by his genius. He comes every day with the newer theorems. And Hardy asked him, Ramanujan, how do you get these theorems? What are the proof of these theorems? Ramanujan very naively said, Sir, proof, I see that they are true. This is Indian wisdom. It's called darshana, I see. What is the proof of God? Ramakrishna, the modern sage of the 20th century, said, I see God, I talk to Him, that is the proof. I will ask you a simple question, all of you who are listening to me. What is the proof that you are sitting and listening to me? You prove that you are there sitting. The proof is I am sitting, that's it. That I am doesn't require any proof. You can say, what is the proof that the table exists there? I have to prove, I have to give you a videograph, I have to give you a photograph. No, it exists. What is the proof that I exist here? The proof that I exist is that I exist. I am is an experience which doesn't require any external proof apart from I amness. That is Vedanta. I am that I am, the famous sentence in the Bible, is a highly Vedantic statement. I am that I am. I think that occurs in the Old Testament. It is revealed to Moses. So Srinivasa Ramanujan was asked by Hardy, can you tell me how you prove these theorems? Show me the proofs. Hardy said, Sir, I see that they are true. That is the problem with geniuses. They can't go through the steps. Just see the truth and that's it. Lower people, lower minds, work on these and work out these proofs. Ultimately, nothing in the world can be proved. They have to be realized, intuited, and felt in the depths of your being. That you sit here can't be proved. Matter can't be proved. Nothing in the universe can be proved per se. Suppose I say, it's a videograph, there's a photograph. How do you prove that the photograph is true? Ultimately, you prove nothing in this universe. Although you cry about intelligence, you cry about analysis and intellect and so on. So Hardy once asked him a simple question. Ramanujan, how do you come up with these theorems? What is the source from which you get all this? Very shyly he said, Sir, there's a secret. I worship a goddess. In my village there's a goddess called the goddess of Namakkal. He was born in the Tanjavur district in Tamil Nadu in India. Namagiri was the place. That goddess, the deity, a Devi, a female goddess, she comes in my dreams and then tells me to write down these theorems. I immediately copy down in the notebook. Hardy was simply astonished. All this is recorded now. You can't wish it away. Those of you who want to give references to some of these phenomena may refer to Roger Penrose's book called The Emperor's New Mind. It was published a couple of decades ago in USA. He was a British living Roger Penrose. He is a living mathematician and a physicist in England.
Emperor's View of Mind.
Emperor's New Mind. He wrote it to take upon the artificial intelligence group. There's a group of people called the AI people, artificial intelligence. You have weak AI and strong AI. The strong AI people contend, even now, is it possible that the entire human brain can be replaced by artificial intelligence? He wrote this book to take upon them, and there's an open public debate about the artificial intelligence. And the story is Roger Penrose lost the debate. He wrote another book called The Shadows of the Mind. And the last and the recent book which he wrote is A Road to Reality. Of course, they are somewhat technical, but the Emperor's New Mind, he writes about this, some of these phenomena. Discoveries in science which are intuitive, completely mystical and religious as it were. Then Hardy said, your goddess comes and reveals these mathematical theorems. How is it possible? He is seeing these theorems before his eyes. He can't see what you see, you can't wish away. Then he is supposed to have commented, this boy is indeed a mathematical genius, but hopelessly religious. There's a blessed hopelessness in religion and philosophy and inward investigation in which you get the greatest hope. Don't swear only by what you see by the senses. They deceive you. In the most part they do. There is something beyond the senses, beyond the body and the mind, the intuitive faculty which reveals certain truths of the world and yourself to you, which you can't conceive through the logical mind. The logical mind can go only up to a point. There's another discussion in that book, Emperor's New Mind, on the Gödel's theorem. Godel is a German, it's an Austrian word. It is pronounced as Gödel or Gödel. That dealt a death blow to mathematical logic. That revealed for the first time the limitations of mathematical logic. That was a revolutionary discovery in the recent times. And many people believe that discovery will shake the very foundations of science. Why I am mentioning all this is because the human intellect has its tremendous limitations. Don't swear by the stupid intellect of the human beings. All of us have limited intelligence. But certain people who are gifted through purity, through meditation, through focus, through a deep urge to investigate into the inner world, making this tremendous, arduous inner journey, are revealed certain truths which are beyond the mind. This is called Vijnanamaya, which you can translate to the intuitive mind, the higher mind which is illumined by supersensory knowledge. But the exploration of the inner journey doesn't stop here. Once you have reached this stage of Vijnana, you can move over to the cosmic dimension of this Vijnana. Our sages discovered, just like the modern scientists, that every truth or entity has two dimensions. One is the microcosmic dimension, the other is the macrocosmic dimension. The microcosm and the macrocosm are built in the same plan. We call it Vyashti and Samashti in Vedanta. So your individual mind, the higher mind which is Vijnanamaya, reveals to you certain truths in the world of light. You see things in a totally different light. Obviously, these great scientists must have strayed into the Vijnanamaya to be able to discover these truths. Although the training which they had at the lower levels of the Manomaya and the Pranamaya and the Annamaya helped them to formulate these ideas. These rishis got these intuitive ideas and they simply threw them as they are. So once you reach the Vijnanamaya, Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, the fourth floor, you can do two things. You can climb up to the fifth floor, Anandamaya, or you can exit through that, horizontally move on to the cosmic dimension of Vijnanamaya. The cosmic dimension of the Vijnanamaya is called the cosmic higher mind, which you can call as the aggregate of all the minds in the universe. Suppose you think of the minds of all the beings in the universe, human beings, animals, plants. How many human beings are there in this universe? About 6.5 billion. And how many animals and plants, other beings, fishes and rats and cats are there in this universe? It should be several trillion. Think of the minds of all of them and think of a super cosmic mind which is the aggregate of all the minds of all the beings. If this had a body and this could be considered as a being, he will be called the Hiranyagarbha, or the Mahat, or the cosmic mind. Vedanta could call this as Ishvara or God. You could conceive of Ishvara as a projection from the microcosm to the macrocosm. I see through two eyes, I eat through one mouth, I think through one mind. Who is the God who I worship? All the eyes in the universe are his eyes. All the mouths in the universe are his mouths. He walks through all feet. He hears through all ears. He eats through all mouths. He sees through all eyes. He thinks through all the minds. Think of a cosmic person of that kind. There are two fundamental principles of science through which Vedanta investigates into the inner world. One, the microcosmic and the macrocosmic worlds are based on the same principle, same plan, the microcosm-macrocosm equation. Two, the projection principle. Since I have no access to the macrocosm, but I have some idea of the microcosm which is me, I find out principles about me and project it onto the macrocosm. This is how science has proceeded. You have a pilot project in the laboratory. I saw in the NASA Space Center a couple of days ago when I visited the Houston. They have a small laboratory in which they simulate the entire atmosphere of space, the space lab. In this simulation, they create situations in which the entire macrocosmic phenomenon is simulated in a tiny fashion in the microcosm. Then you project on. This is a fundamental principle in science. Since I do not know who is God, what is God, I do not know the vast universe. Since I know myself, to some extent, all the principles that I discover about myself, the individual, I project onto the cosmic. This is how human knowledge has proceeded, has expanded. The mystery of creation, even now science is dabbling with this. Vedanta is also trying to find out what is the mystery of creation. Who created this universe? When was it created? We have the concept of the cyclic time. We have a creator called Brahma in Indian Puranas, whose age is supposed to be 311.1 trillion years, human years. The cyclic, he goes and another Brahma comes in. The book of Genesis has its own theory in Bible, and the scientists, the Big Bang people have their own theories. They say the whole thing was created about 13.8 billion years ago. But Vedanta says it was not created, it will come again and again. The theory of the Big Bang of the universe, the theory of the oscillating universe, expanding universe. So human mind wants to have so many theories. Do not think science is the last word. Science is struggling to come up with various models by which the mystery of this universe can be understood. There's various models. As long as these models fit certain experiments, we say these models are good. The moment an experiment comes in which goes against this model is thrown out, a new model is brought in its place. But knowledge doesn't go, knowledge grows. So there is a statement that the corridor of science is littered with the skeletons of discarded models and theories. When you walk along, you see so many skeletons. There are various theories which have come up. In exactly the same way, Vedanta, religion, also comes up with different models. There are so many schools of Vedanta in which the theories of creation differ. There are so many books which talk about creation in so many different ways. Don't ask which is true. Each one of them is a theory or a model which has been conceived of that particular rishi or particular person or a seer or a spiritual scientist based on certain facts and phenomena. Individually, I see that I become a creator God during dreams. This is my experience. Vedanta always bases its entire philosophy on daily experience. It is not theory, it is not philosophy, it is not metaphysics, it is not theology, it is not religion. It is just an investigation into the nature of my daily experience. When I dream, I see so many objects. I become the subject as well as the object. And I discover, therefore, consciousness has the capacity to divide itself into a subject and an object. From there, I make a very profound projection. What is that? This is how perhaps God would have created this world. I create my own world and dream as the creator. So when the Supreme Being, who is a cosmic person, who is the aggregate of all individuals, when he sleeps and dreams, his creation is this universe. This is one insight. Projecting from the micro to the macro and basing yourself upon the equivalence of the micro-macro. So this universe is actually a dream of God. This is one theory, which is quite satisfying, scientific. So the Indian God who is creating is conceived as all the time lying down, dreaming. His name is Vishnu. The protector God, from the navel of this Vishnu, the Nabhi, Brahma the creator is produced. Finally, you may think of this as the singularity, the black hole which is being spoken of by physics. There's a big bang. The singularity is the Nabhi. Why the Nabhi? Nabhi is a small singularity there in the human body, which is connected by a cord when the child is born from the mother's womb. So from there, Brahma comes in, and this Brahma, who lives for 311.1 trillion years, human years, projects this entire universe. And there are so many theories, I'll not go into that at the moment. I'm just giving you an idea of how the human mind has explored the inner world, based upon two fundamental principles: the principle of the microcosm-macrocosm equivalence, and the principle of projection from the micro onto the macrocosm. So we get some conception about this. So this entire universe of created universe is the dream of God. And when my mind gets attuned to God's mind, then I will see the entire world as a dream. So when Vedanta speaks about, some schools of Vedanta say the world is just like a dream, it does not mean it's my individual dream. It's the dream of God, and when my mind gets attuned, inseparably connected to God's mind, I will see the entire world as a dream. Because I am a creator God in my dream. So the universal God, who is the sum total of all minds, he dreams this. And just like my dream objects do not know me as the dreamer, we do not know God as the dreamer. Suppose I dream today and see this event happening. I am talking to all of you online, and you are listening to me. I dream, and I see you there. Tomorrow, on waking up, you don't come and tell me, Swami, I saw you in the dream yesterday. Just like the dream objects in the dream do not know me as the dreamer, we do not know God as the dreamer. We are the dream objects of God. And when God completely goes to sleep, same phenomenon which we have, then the entire universe vanishes. This is called Mahapralaya. There is nothing. Again, when he wakes up, the whole thing starts again. So just like individual experiences of waking, dream and deep sleep you go through, the cosmic person also goes through this, and therefore there is a cycle of creation which is continuously going on. You do not know when it began, and you do not know when it's going to end. It is Anadi Ananta. Time, therefore, is infinite, beginningless and endless. Space is beginningless and endless. Creation is beginningless and endless. You try to find out, get a peep into the mystery of creation by projecting on from the microcosm to the macrocosm and basing yourself on the scientifically accepted principle of the equivalence of the microcosm and the macrocosm. This is how human thinking has proceeded. Human mind is struggling to find out the cosmic mystery. Suppose you say, don't worry about all this, let the cosmic mystery remain. No, I can't remain in peace. Human mind is exploratory. You explore the outside world. Why do you go to the moon? Why do you have huge projects of going to the Mars? Because I want to explore. Exploration and adventurism is a fundamental quality of the human's mind. Just like you explore in the outer world, I explore in the inner world. I discover so many mysteries which are so satisfying. So that's why in India, hundreds of thousands of documented versions of these proofs have existed. How many schools of thought, even in Vedanta, and apart from Vedanta, how many different schools of thought talking about the human mind, its mystery. Buddhism, for example, has hundreds of thousands of books talking about the various nuances of the human mind, about creation, about what is happening. This is an extraordinary exploration. So when you land up in the Hiranyagarbha, walking through the horizontal corridor leading you from the individual to the cosmic, microcosmic to the macrocosmic, from the Veshti to the Samashti, you come face to face with your Creator. Because the Supreme Cosmic Being has its residence in what is called the Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is the cosmic mind. When you realize that, you become one with that cosmic person. And beyond that is the formless and nameless. Because all that you see in this world is name and form. And there is experience within you which is called deep sleep, profound, dreamless sleep, in which names and forms have completely vanished. In exactly the same way in the macrocosm, there could be a situation names and forms are completely obliterated, and what happens then can't be described because there is no person to describe it. You and I don't exist. This world doesn't exist. Nothing exists except one homogeneous, undifferentiated, pure mass of consciousness. They call it Akhanda Ekarasa. Pragyana Ghana. The Pragyana Ghana in deep sleep is covered with ignorance. But the mass of consciousness is undifferentiated, Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta, ever awakened, ever shining, conscious, pure intelligence which is beyond the ordinary intellect. And Vedanta says that is your real nature. And you come down from the supreme reality up to walking down through the Vijnanamaya, Manomaya, and the Pranamaya and the Anandamaya. You function, and now and then you can go inward, take the elevator, switch on, go to 4th floor, walk around and come back. And this is a great inner exploration for which the San Diego Vedanta Society invites you to take this journey. It's free. You have to be committed. You have to be interested. And you have to feel the thrill of this adventure. And it's highly rewarding. Your face will shine, glory will come, power will come, all that is good and grand will come when the soul awakens to its self-conscious activity. All that is needed to get awakened to our inner nature and the joyful exploration of the inner world. So the San Diego Vedanta Monastery, which is part of the Vedanta Society of Southern California, invites you heartily to embark upon this remarkable inner journey. Welcome. Thank you.